Yo, what's good YouTube? This is Zangiru, and today I got a new video for you guys. And basically today we're gonna be installing a firewall to our system. All right, so how can we do that? All right, so that is actually not that hard of a task. So the first thing that you are gonna basically need is a disposable laptop or an extra computer that you have. You can install it on your same machine in a virtual machine if you'd like, in a virtual box. So that is fine. However, I'm going to be showing you guys how to actually install this on an actual old laptop to be using this as the main firewall. So I wanted to show you that I'm using an old laptop. So as you can see, this is an Intel Celeron laptop set to Toshiba satellite, and I just have it connected to a monitor over here, as you can see on the left, and as well as that I have the USB connected to the laptop. All right. So I'll see you guys when we're setting up. So all you need to do is just go into your browser and search for IPFIREWall. All right. And it's called IPFIRE. This is a really simple one for a beginner. It's an open source Linux based firewall. So it's kind of like pfSense if you heard about pfSense. The only difference is it's just a little bit more simpler in terms of the the graphical user interface. Okay, so we're just gonna go to the download page and just make sure to download the ISO image. That's x86_64. That is basically for Windows machines that are 32-bit or 64-bit, but it's not gonna work unless it's 64-bit. So just make sure to download that ISO image. After you're done with that, just go into Google again and just search for the USB installer, which is going to be called Rufus. You can also use something that is called Ventoy, which is going to allow you to just copy the ISO file to the USB instead of installing it. But for now, for a simple setup, we can just use Rufus. So again, just make sure to download this one, right? After you're done, go into your Rufus. Press yes, just run it as administrator. Make sure you're selecting the USB file and then select the ISO file, all right? After you're done, hit start, and it's gonna take just a little while to actually set this up. That is fine. So I'm just gonna hit start and I'm gonna leave it, and then, okay. So just make sure when you press start on it to write in ISO mode, and then hit OK, and then yes. And again, it's just going to give you a warning that all data on your USB will be destroyed. So just make sure to press OK. Of course, like I said, you need a disposable USB and a disposable laptop or an extra computer that you don't need the data on. We're going to hit OK, and we're just going to leave it a little while to install, and then I'm going to get back to you guys basically to identify the devices that are on the network. You can just go into your routers page, which is 192.168.1.1, or for some routers it's going to be 192.168.0.1, right? So we're going to be greeted with an interface like this. You can just select LAN devices. So as you can see right now, all I can actually see is my actual machine that I'm working on right now. And how I know this is basically if I run this command on the Windows command prompt, which is ipconfig-all, it's going to show us that the Ethernet adapter, or the one that's connected to this PC, this is not the old laptop that I'm using, it's 192.168.1.2. This is the private IP that's connected over here. And I also have my mobile phone, which is connected as well. I'm going to blur out all this information. I just want to show you the Internet Protocol version 4, or the IP version 4. So basically, my computer is going to be 192.168.1.4. If you do not know that, of course, before installing the pfSense or the firewall that we're installing today, to hit that just to check out your private IP. All right, and then go into your internet settings, go into your local settings, the local network, and then LAN, then go downwards, go to your DHCP server, make sure it is on, all right? As well as get the DHCP start IP address, the DHCP end IP address, and also the primary DNS and secondary DNS. For DNS service, basically the domain name secondary, just to simplify things, is where you basically can simplify and restrict network access through domain name secondary. You can do it by actually restricting the URLs if you want to, but for this example, I am using cloud. So this is 111. So this is Cloudflare, but for families. If you want to block malware and adult content, for example, you can use 111.3. You can use 1.00.3. And you could use just the normal one, which is 1111. And for the secondary, it's 1.0.0.1. Okay, so there's two flavors, like I showed you, with the malware blocking and the malware and adult content. So you can just select the preferred one for you. And of course, you can also add in IPv6 configuration, all right? So we're gonna go back here. We're just gonna apply these. And that is pretty much it in terms of the router setup. For just to make sure everything is set up correctly, you can just go into management and diagnosis and then hit reboot to restart the system. All right, so I'm just going to reboot the router and I'm going to get back to you.
All right, guys, so in this section, like I said, we're going to be setting up the firewall. So the first thing you're going to do is just power up your machine, and we're going to go into the BIOS. All right, so if you're using like this laptop's motherboard, basically when you go into F12, it's going to go into the boot menu. For other BIOSes, that can be F1 or F2 and sometimes even F9. Just check out your motherboard manufacturer and it will show you basically what key you should press to go into the boot menu. Right, so after selecting the USB as the first boot option, you're just gonna select enter, which is basically installing IPFIRE 2.29. all right, and we're gonna press enter. In the next steps, we're gonna be pressing space instead of enter. It's gonna be even shown on the bottom of the monitor, and when you see a screen like this, do not be afraid. All right,
so first menu, we're gonna be greeted with the language selection screen. All you really need to do is just select the language, then start installation. To accept the license, press on the right button, and then spacebar, then enter. It's gonna give you a disclaimer, so this is a warning. The installation program will now prepare the chosen hard disk. This will basically delete all your data on the hard disk. That's why the title of the video is Turn Your Old Laptop into a Firewall. So this is supposed to be like a disposable laptop in hand, old PC, or a virtual machine if you want to install it on a virtual machine and you don't have a laptop at disposal. So you're going to press enter, and then you're going to select ext4 file system, which is the first option, right? It's going to take a little bit of a while because basically it's just creating the file systems and partitioning the disks for you. So I already had this installed before, but I'm going to reinstall it for you guys so you could check up the setup correctly. I'm just going to give it a moment or two. Again, I can press F12 to check out the progression of the installation, but it's stuck on creating file system. So again, as you can see, it just went directly to installing the system. So after installing the system, all we are going to do is something really simple. We're just going to take the USB stick out, but just make sure that it says that on the screen so that the system itself isn't actually installed. And then you're going to be setting up the installation of the operating system, or the firewall in our case, after the installation is done by just removing the USB key. So just give it a while. Don't like rush things. It's just installing the bootloader for now. And actually, also, if you want to check out the network configuration, you need to watch the section before this, which I also did. This is basically going to be recorded on the other computer, which we connected to our home router. We found out the IP of the machine right now that we're installing the firewall on, as well as our gateway and DNS servers. All of this is just to basically make sure we got the correct information for the network configuration. So after we're done installation, it's going to tell you IPFIRE was successfully installed. Please remove any installation mediums from the system. So all we're going to do is just basically take out the USB flash drive. So as you can see, here's the USB flash drive. I don't know if you could see it or not, but I just took it out. That is fine. So we could just press enter. And it's just going to reboot the system. So just give it a moment or two while the system is rebooting. Don't do anything. You're just going to be greeted with the network configuration screen, right? So you're going to find out that the system has been installed and it's going to be booting to it directly. And the first boot is just going to look a little bit weird, but that is fine. Just give it a while and you're going to find a GUI that we're going to be using at the end of the video. Or the installation is going to be continuing on in using a graphical user interface, but just give it a few more moments. It just sometimes takes a little bit of a while on older machines. Again, if you're interested in knowing the specifications of this machine, it's going to be in the description. It's an old Toshiba laptop with DDR2 RAM. So I don't think there's that much else to say, except that the system also runs on an Intel Celeron. So by today's terms, this could be considered as e-waste, but I do not. All right, so I had to sneeze there. I apologize. I do not consider this as e-waste. All right, so we're going to be welcomed by a keyboard mapping. This is basically just the difference between keyboard mappings. Like, for example, US and UK. UK is like basically the keyboard mapping is responsible for special characters. So for UK, you're going to be using a euro sign, and in the US, it's going to be a dollar sign. So just take note of that and choose the keyboard mapping for your country. Afterwards, just select the time zone that you are in. I would advise you to actually use your official time zone because you want to actually monitor what's happening on the firewall itself, internally and externally. So I'm just going to select the time zone for me. I'm going to enter the machine's host name. Let's call it home field, for example. Then we're going to hit OK. In terms of the local domain, make sure to keep it as it is, local domain. And then in terms of the password, the only really weird thing about this, you're not going to be able to see what you're writing. So after we are done, just go to the bottom, just press the down button on the keyboard and rewrite the password again. So don't make it an over complex password because you're probably going to mess it up. But again, make it a good, strong password. So again, we're going to rewrite the password. And why did we write it twice? Because basically, you're making a password for the root user and the admin user. So these are two different users. The admin has less privileges than a root user. However, basically, you can set up two different passwords if you like. Whatever you prefer. For simplicity, I just chose the same password for now. Okay, so you're going to be greeted to a screen that says green plus red. And what that basically is, you go into the documentation of IPFIRE. We're going to find out just what is the network configuration types and how can you actually identify them. I also have them on the screen on the other computer. I'm going to just edit that for you. There are zones that you should select from. So it's telling us green plus red, which is the actually the most appropriate setup for us, which is going to be the WAN. So red stands for the WAN, or the wireless access network, or basically just the external network that we're going to be connecting to. And the green one is basically going to be the local access area network. So just make sure that the laptop itself has Wi-Fi in it, and as well as that the Ethernet cable in it is working. Okay, so again, to simplify, green is for LAN, red is for WAN, and orange is for something called DMZ, or demilitarized zone. This is basically, the demilitarized zone is an unprotected network that's accessible from the internet. And finally, the blue one, which stands for the wireless network. It is for separate network for wireless devices, all right? Okay, so we need to assign the network interface cards. So we're just gonna go into network configuration type. Make sure to have green plus red first of all if you don't have that selected. Okay, so green and red. So it's gonna be on the top over here, you're gonna see it. And then drivers and cards assignment. Let's start with the red one actually. Okay, and this one is gonna be the basically you're gonna select the wireless adapter for it, or the network interface card for it. So that's gonna be the wireless one. For me, it is the Qualcomm Aetherios AR242. And in terms of the Ethernet cable, it's by the network interface card that's called the Realtek Semiconductor RTL 810. So I'm gonna start, like I said, because we're doing the red one, which is gonna be the WAN. So red one, right? And for the green, that's gonna be basically the Ethernet connector. Address settings, right? So this is where we can basically manually actually add in the address settings that we got from the previous section. So let's start by the red one, which is gonna be for the router. Select DHCP, which I showed you guys how to set it up. In the IP address and gateway, it is going to be something really simple. Okay. So I just want to make sure that, okay, so let's start actually by the green one, all right? So this one is going to be the fourth machine that I have on the network. So that's why I selected number 4. Basically, the router is number 1, another computer is number 2, and my phone is number 3, so this computer is number 4. But again, I showed you how to get it from the router page, okay? We're gonna press OK. And then the red one, oh, okay. So again, it's gonna be actually, you can mention also as well static. So it's gonna be probably a static one for the router. Okay, so like as you could see over here. So network mask, and then we're gonna go to the one below it, which is network mask. It's basically 2555 for me, because I showed you guys how to do that on IPconfig-all. So if I do hit IPconfig-all again on my other computer, I will be able to get my network mask. That is basically for me 255.255.0, and my gateway is the same router. So that's pretty much it. I'm gonna press OK, and I'm gonna press done, and then we're gonna press done as well. Okay, so confirm the DHCP server by entering the settings information. So if you want to set up the DHCP server like I showed you guys, again, you can get that the page of the router. So again, let me do that really quickly on my computer. We are going to go into local network on the router page, and then local area network. We're going to scroll a little bit down and go into DHCP server. Right, so the starting address is the same one that it's over here on the left. So DHCP start IP address, their starting address, which is basically all the machines that are on the server or the router itself. Okay, the end address is going to be the same thing, but just the end is going to be a little bit different. So again, the values might actually differ for your computer. And in terms of the primary DNS, again, I do have the family Cloudflare DNS, which is this one. Already have it attached to the router, but if you have a different one, again, you're going to find that in ipconfig-all, or you can also find that in the DHCP server section, which is going to show you also as well primary DNS and secondary DNS. Okay, in terms of the domain name, just keep it local domain, and that's pretty much it. In terms of the DHCP server configuration, I'm just going to press enter. Setup is complete, and voila, basically you just set up your firewall. But for now, you're going to probably ask me, how can I access this? So that is going to be a really simple task. So again, you might experience just a little bit of a long boot time for the first time. Again, that is fine. So just leave it for the first time to actually boot up and figure out everything that we just added in for our manual configuration. Now, it's basically just telling us, please log in. So this is the home shield that we defined. So again, all I'm just going to do, you can go in with your root password. So the user is going to be root, and the password is whatever password you selected. Again, try to make this a strong password. And that is pretty much it, you guys, right? So if I ifconfig, then A, yeah, so that is basically what we registered. So as you can see over here, we got 19.168.1.4. It's basically the green one. The red one is the router one. And let's actually go and access this firewall on the system itself. And if you want to make sure that the system's firewall, actually by using a command, if you guys are interested in that, if you want to make sure it's actually opened, you can also check out the documentation that is done by IPFIRE.org. So just Google how to restart IPFIRE server. So again, I'm just opening the documentation. Like for example, you want to check out if the DHCP server is open. You just clear everything, or actually let's keep it so you could see it. So etc, then rc.d, and then init.d, then DHCP. Okay, DHCP, and then you're gonna find start, stop, reload commands, and so on. Right, so again, it's telling us that's unable to continue because it's already the DHCP server is running, starting unbound DHCP leases bridge, right? Again, it's unable to continue because it's already running. So again, if you want to make sure if any of your services are working correctly, you can check out the documentation that is done by the community IPFIRE.org. I'm going to leave a link in the description. So let's actually go right now to the computer, and I'm going to show you guys how actually you can use this firewall on your home system from just accessing a link while you have your laptop open. So see you guys in that section. So you're just going to go into 192.168.1.4, which is the IP of the machine that we installed pfSense on, and then the port is going to be 444, which is the port that's going to be basically communicating with the firewall. Right, so basically it's giving us bad request. Why? Because we're using an HTTP request. We should be using an HTTPS request. So this is going to be the final URL you're supposed to go to. It's going to give us your connection is not private. That is fine. Just go to that and proceed. So let me go into the admin and then let's sign in. And that is pretty much it. So as you could see, the network itself, we can start actually monitoring what's happening, and also as well start actually adding in rules and so on and so forth. Of course, you can also adapt the GUI settings. Like I said, this is why I'm using IPFIRE, because it's simpler to install. You can also use something like pfSense if you'd like. But again, that's pretty much it for this video. So I'll see you guys in the next video. This was Angu to you, and peace, you guys.